Hi, welcome to episode 26 of the Krishnamurti podcast with Sam Yogi. In this episode, Krishnamurti will end up saying the following. Krishnamurti or K will describe how people realizing their old beliefs and traditions no longer hold meaning search for new ideals, teachers, or systems to find either fresh sensations or a sense of security. But true understanding of life comes only when the mind is free from these cravings. Seeking security or accumulating knowledge creates safeguards that limit awareness and strengthen the sense of I, leading to conflict with the flow of life. To avoid this conflict, the mind invents further illusions of safety, becoming increasingly trapped like a wealthy man who, fearing emptiness without possessions, seeks more security by endlessly accumulating wealth. This is, in a nutshell, what you will say towards the end of the excerpt of the talk that we are going to look at from J. Krishnamurti. So, this is how he continues his talk in Holland, Ommen, Holland, 1933. J. Krishnamurti. Many of you come to these meetings with the desire to find a new set of beliefs and systems in which you can take comforting shelter. But I cannot give them to you, as there are no shelters or escapes from life. These beliefs are snares and illusions, destroying utterly understanding. You are unconsciously ever wanting these comforting illusions, and naturally, what I say must cause bewilderment, disappointment. You listen to what I say, but my words leave you in great confusion. Now, before I continue with what I want to say, please let me make one or two points clear. I am not talking to an audience with one mind, one heart, one belief. I am not talking to a group of people who come here for pleasure or out of habit, or to a nucleus of listeners with sectarian spirit. I am not talking to an assemblage of mere reformers. I am not addressing a group. I am talking to individuals. For only when you are entirely alone are you able to discern what is true. Let me repeat that I am not a reformer. I am not here to remake you, to force you to follow a new set of beliefs. Please understand the significance of this. Most of you want to shape yourselves after a certain pattern, to conform to a set of ideas, beliefs. Now, this attempt to force the mind and heart after a belief, a pattern, must inevitably create conflict and suffering. So, I am not creating a new system for you to follow. I am not offering you a new set of beliefs which shall act as your guide. People want to fit into a mold. because they think that living according to a pattern can be easier, safer, and without suffering than living without one. They struggle to force their mental and emotional lives to fit into the grooves of a set system. Then, having conformed, they try to force others to reshape their lives. And this they call helping and reforming the world, serving mankind, and other fine sounding phrases. Now, I do not desire to reform you, but what I want to do is to help you perceive the barriers that surround you. And when you have discerned them, you can be rid of them yourself and not reshape yourself to fit some other pattern. When you yourself break through these patterns and systems, your action becomes spontaneous. Then it is no longer bound by mere custom. It is no longer born of mere habit. When you free your mind and heart from these barriers that shut them in, then there is the flow of reality. Now, your existence may be quite placid and contented, which may be taken for a life of understanding. But in reality, you may have merely protected yourself against problems and conflicts through beliefs, ideals, and explanations. But you are conscious of life only when there is conflict, pain, suffering, out of which alone comes the true understanding of life. For instance, the true understanding, a sprained ankle, for instance, as long as it is carefully bandaged and not used, it may give you no pain. But when it is used, blood surges through it, causing pain. Again, let me repeat this. For instance, a sprained ankle, as long as it is carefully bandaged and not used, it may give you no pain. But when it is used, blood surges through it, causing pain. So, likewise, you have many twisted ideas and perverted judgments of which you are wholly unconscious. They reveal themselves only through conflict and suffering if you do not escape from them. When you become mentally and emotionally aware of these barriers without reshaping yourself after another pattern, the freedom from these limitations is a spontaneous and an intelligent progress without self imposed discipline and control. So let's stop here. What K has said so far is self explanatory. He says that you have twisted ideas, perverted judgments of which you are unconscious. Only through conflict and suffering, if you do not escape from your suffering, these judgments which are perverted, these ideas which are twisted, reveal themselves. Right now, they are unconscious. Unless you bring them back to consciousness, you will not be able to know them and act upon them. Now, let's continue with what Krishnamurti or K says in this talk. Most people think only in terms of reform, but not in complete change, revolution. People insist, for instance, on the value of discipline. They believe that they can reform themselves only through rigid self control. They believe either in an artificial discipline externally imposed as by society, religion, or economic conditions, or in an inner discipline according to which they govern themselves. Either a man adopts an external standard as a beacon by which he guides his thoughts, or he creates an inner safeguard which guides his actions. That is the case with the majority of people. I don't believe in reforming discipline. To me, discipline is merely destructive. It is a narrowing down of the heart and mind. Later on, we shall come back to this point. I talk of it here merely to point out that from my point of view, there cannot be reformation with regard to discipline. Since you believe in it, since the structure of your thought is based on discipline, on control, on authority, there naturally arises confusion between what I say and your convictions. Okay, let's stop here and understand what he means here by the discipline that we enforce on ourselves to excel in life. For example, I also instruct as Sam Yogi on yoga, just like Krishnamurti thought or acted on yoga and pranayama or breathing exercises as means to a good health. I do that. Now, in yoga, there are postures which you have to do for a long time, and they may give pain to the body. Now, people think that by giving pain to their body, by doing it for a longer time, they will benefit. Sam Yogi, for one, is on the other camp. Never torture your body, never hurt it. He learned it, Sam Yogi learned it from his Vedanta preceptor, a man called Swami Niranjan, on which Sam Yogi does a separate podcast in Hindi on the mantras from the Upanishads. Now, coming back to Krishnamurti's talk, let's continue with what K has to say. Discovering that former beliefs, traditions, and ideals have no longer any deep significance. You are seeking new ideals, ethics, and new conceptions to replace the old. So you go from one teacher to another, from one sect or religion to another, hoping that by putting together many finites, there will be the infinite, like the bee that gathers honey. Either there is a search for a change that will yield a new and further sensation, or else there is a desire for deep inner security only through a new system of beliefs, ideals, and through its exponents. Let's repeat this sentence, which is long. Either there is a search for a change that will yield a new and further sensation, or else there is a desire for deep inner security only through a new system of beliefs, ideals, and through its exponents. Which of these are you seeking? If you are seeking neither of these, sensation nor security, then there is in you a deep longing to understand life itself. Realizing that from this understanding alone can there be a new conception of morality and of action. But to fully grasp the significance of this, the mind must be free from the desire for security and sensation. This is one of the most difficult tasks, to keep the mind and heart from conformity and accumulative knowledge, which becomes merely a safeguard against the ever changing present or against the future. Okay, let's repeat this sentence. This is one of the most difficult tasks, to keep the mind and heart from conformity and accumulative knowledge, which becomes merely a safeguard against the ever changing present or against the future. The reserve fund of these safeguards creates the limited consciousness of the I. So let's repeat it. But to fully grasp the significance of this, the mind must be free from the desire for security and sensation. This is one of the most difficult tasks, to keep the mind and heart from conformity and accumulative knowledge, which becomes merely a safeguard against the ever changing present or against the future. The reserve fund of these safeguards creates the limited consciousness of the I. Between these protective safeguards and the movement of life, there must inevitably arise conflict. To escape from this conflict, the mind creates further security and illusions, getting more and more entangled and limited. Take the case of a wealthy man. He is afraid of the emptiness that would exist in his life if he lost his possessions. As he dreads this, he tries to make himself more and more secure by the continual attempt to increase his possessions. So let's stop here as far as the talk that K gave is concerned. And let's try to wrap up what he says towards the end. So K describes how people, realizing their old beliefs and traditions no longer hold meaning, search for new ideals, teachers, or systems to find either fresh sensations or a sense of security. But true understanding of life comes only when the mind is free from these cravings, new sensations, travel to new places, new positions, new possessions. These are mere cravings. Similarly, a sense of security is a craving, because if you have listened to what K has been saying, K says repeatedly, once you get to the bottom of this and once you understand it without escaping from your suffering and your misery, you will see that there is no security in life, neither psychological nor physical security. But true understanding of life comes only when the mind is free from these cravings of security and sensations. Seeking security or accumulating knowledge creates safeguards that limit awareness and strengthen the sense of the self, of I, leading to conflict with the flow of life. To avoid this conflict, the mind invents further illusions of safety, becoming increasingly trapped. Like a wealthy man who, fearing emptiness without possessions, seeks more security by endlessly accumulating wealth. And I don't have to go very far. You see the rich and the powerful and the famous, how they acquire, go on acquiring house after house, possession after possession, sailboat after sailboat, plane after plane, and so on. And some in some cases, like in the Western civilizations, wife after wife. So this continues. Now we end the podcast here. Thank you for listening. It has been somewhat longer than the usual podcast. And we shall continue with the talk that Kay gave in the next podcast, which will be episode number 27. Thank you. You have a nice day.